So I'm not concerned about war. What I'm concerned of is miscalculations and military operation based on misinformation and disinformation campaigns. It is obvious to us that there are certain elements, certain parties who want to drag President Trump into this war for their own benefits. And I think President Trump is wise enough to make a correct decision.
How can a meaningful negotiations process be jump-started right now?
A meaningful negotiation should be based on trust. And unfortunately, we have lost our trust to the United States as a negotiating partner. We need to overcome this mistrust. There are now some intermediators, some friendly countries in the region who are trying to build this confidence. It is difficult, but they are trying. So I see the possibility of another talk if the US negotiation team follows what President Trump said, to come to a fair and equitable deal to ensure that there is no nuclear weapons.
Today on 45th Perspective, we're unpacking a Senate hearing that drew a lot of attention this week. The committee brought in high-level officials to answer pointed questions about the administration's latest national security decisions, specifically how these decisions were made, what intelligence they were based on, and what risks they could pose for Americans at home and abroad. There was tension, there was pushback, and there were a few moments where the room got noticeably uncomfortable. Before we dive into all of that, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to support this kind of thoughtful, independent analysis, head over to patreon.com/45thPerspective. Your support really helps keep these conversations going. So let's start with the basics of what the hearing aimed to uncover.
So if this confidence is built, if you get to that stage, you are ready and willing to sit down directly with the American side, with someone like Witkoff, and talk?
No, the question of directly and indirectly is something else. That is the form of negotiation, and we have to.
But that's what they say they want. That.
Yes, but we have to take care of the substance of negotiation, and that is more important.
Yeah, and President Trump says that negotiations are already going on. He has said overnight that there is negotiations taking place. How does that work right now with this confidence building, with countries in the region also helping?
That is through intermediators. As I said, there are some countries who convey messages and who are trying to build confidence and to prepare the ground for a meaningful negotiation. And we are working with them, and we are exchanging messages.
Would you say that these talks that are going on right now are fruitful and can lead to a de-escalation of the situation to a point where real talks can take place?
I think so far, yes, fruitful.
Things like enrichment, things like ballistic missiles, things like proxy forces in the region. I know that the United States has talked about wanting to negotiate about that as well. Is that completely out of the question for you, or is that something you could at least talk about?
President Trump said no nuclear weapons, and we fully agree with that. That could be a very good deal. Of course, in return, we expect sanction lifting. So that deal is possible. Let's do not talk about impossible things.
What do you think the consequences would be if there was a full-on military confrontation between Iran and the United States? Because I know your military has changed its doctrine, that if there is a major attack, it would be considered existential for the Islamic Republic. What would that mean for the region here?
If war starts, that would be a disaster for everybody. In the previous war, we tried hard to limit the scope of war between Iran and Israel. This time, if it is between Iran and the US, since the US bases are spread all over the region, then inevitably, many parts of the region would be involved, engaged, and that could be very dangerous. Our missiles were tested in a real war last time, and we were able to, understand their problems, their weak points, and their strengths. So we learned many lessons from those 12 days of war, and I think we are now very well prepared. But again, being prepared doesn't mean that we want war. We want to prevent a war.
President Trump said he's also concerned about the rights of those who are in custody. As you know, he said that he believes that he prevented hangings from taking place here in Iran. Can you guarantee the rights of those who have been detained and whose cases are being looked into right now?
Of course. First of all, there was no plan for executions or hangings. So there were no plan as such. And right now, I can, affirm that the right of each and every person who is arrested and detained would be observed and guaranteed.
Senators wanted to know whether the administration acted on solid intelligence or whether the process was rushed, influenced by political pressure, or lacking proper oversight. That's the core of almost every major hearing on foreign policy, but the stakes felt especially high this time, partly because the situation itself is tense, and partly because both parties are under pressure to show they're being responsible stewards of national security. The questioning split pretty cleanly along party lines, though not completely. Several senators pressed officials about the timeline of briefings, asking when key decisions were communicated to Congress and whether lawmakers had been kept in the dark. They argued that if the executive branch wants Congress to authorize funding, support military posture changes, or defend policy in public, then it needs to be transparent and upfront about the reasoning behind those decisions. Their tone wasn't hostile, but it was firm. Credibility comes from clarity. Meanwhile, senators who support the administration's approach focused on something different. Their argument was essentially that foreign policy can't be run by committee. They emphasized that sensitive intelligence can't always be shared in detail and that slowing down decision-making for the sake of optics could actually compromise national security. In their view, the executive branch needs flexibility to act quickly, and hearings shouldn't become a venue for second-guessing in real time. One of the more interesting exchanges came when witnesses were asked directly about the costs, literal and strategic, of the administration's actions. They acknowledged that even well-intentioned decisions can have ripple effects. Increased military spending, strained relations with allies, shifting global markets, and a general sense of instability that affects everything from consumer confidence to energy prices. Whether you agree with the administration or not, it was refreshing to hear officials speak frankly about the trade-offs. That honesty doesn't always show up in televised hearings. But what stood out most to me wasn't any single moment. It was how clearly the hearing highlighted the broader struggle inside American politics, the balance between speed and accountability. One side believes transparency is essential for trust. The other believes decisiveness is essential for safety. And the truth, as usual, probably lies somewhere in the uncomfortable middle. You need oversight to prevent mistakes, but you also need enough operational freedom for officials to act when time really is of the essence. For everyday Americans watching all this, the question is always the same. How does any of this affect my life? And honestly, it does, more than it may seem. Foreign policy isn't just about diplomats and generals. It affects markets, prices, the stability of regions where American troops are stationed, and the likelihood of future conflicts. A single miscalculation can reshape foreign alliances or trigger consequences that hit right here at home. That's why hearings like this matter. They pull back the curtain just enough for the public to see whether decisions are being made thoughtfully or recklessly. My personal takeaway is that the hearing showed genuine concerns on both sides, even if they often talk past each other. Some senators are pushing for transparency not because they distrust the military, but because they've seen how secrecy can lead to unintended consequences. Others defend the administration not out of blind loyalty, but out of a belief that foreign policy demands a degree of agility. Neither position is inherently unreasonable. The challenge is finding a system that allows for both accountability and responsiveness, something Washington hasn't always done well. That's why discussions like this are worth our time. They remind us that democracy isn't just elections. It's the constant push and pull of oversight, questioning, and defending decisions. And the more we understand the mechanics behind these debates, the better equipped we are to evaluate the choices made in our name. Thanks for watching 45th Perspective. If you want to support the channel and help us keep creating thoughtful, in-depth analysis, you can do that at patreon.com/45thPerspective. And now I want to hear from you. What stood out to you about this hearing? What do you think Congress should be demanding from the administration or giving it more room to do? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments, and let's keep the conversation going.